What's up, y'all? Welcome to another channel of MHRP, Machine Head Repair Project. I'm going to start calling him MHRP, make it short. Thank you for visiting to another channel here. We're going to be talking about alternators, how alternators work, what's their purpose, and how to test an alternator. So stay tuned. So, what is an alternator? An alternator is an electrical generator that converts mechanical energy to electrical energy in the form of alternating currents for a reason of cost and simplicity. Most alternators use a rotating magnetic field. Basically, to put it in a simple way, it recharges your battery. So let's go out to a car, find the alternator, and take a look at one and do some tests. But before we go out there, make sure you have your handy dandy multimeter, and make sure when you have a multimeter, and all multimeters test is voltage, that it will look like this, and you have a black lead and a red lead. So let's go. So right here we're looking at the engine. So with the engine, we have two main things that we're going to be looking at. The topic is the alternator, but it's important that we don't leave the battery out of this. So right here we have the battery, and the alternator is right here on the top. Alternators are always run by serpentine belt, so wherever you see where the serpentine belt is, the alternator will lie. So before we go towards the alternator, first thing you always want to do is check voltage on the battery. The battery should be about 12.6 volts because it's a 12 volt battery. So let's check that with our voltmeter. So with our handy dandy voltmeter, what you want to do is put on the setting to 20 and make sure you have your black lead in calm and your red in voltage. Alright, so let's go ahead and check on the voltage of the battery. So right now the multimeter is showing 0, and we want to touch the black lead in the negative and the red lead in the positive. When you check the battery, you always want to do a visual test of the battery and make sure there's no buildup, contamination, or leaks of acid or whatnot. From there, you're going to go ahead and touch the red on the positive lead, and then the black and the negative terminal. And right now we're showing 12.4, and that's a good sign. That's actually a good battery. Alright, so once we check the battery is good, now we want to do a visual inspection of the alternator. So the alternator lies right here. So when you do an inspection on the alternator, a visual inspection, you want to check the serpentine belt that goes around the pulley of the alternator, and then you want to check the wiring and the casing. You don't want to see buildup of oil. You don't want to see, you want to make sure the belt's not cracked. You want to see the electrical wire intact. You don't want to see any cut or slice. You want to see the connection connected, and then where the B port is, where the battery, the cable, B port cable that leads to the battery, that's well intact, because that's where, when the alternator starts alternating and converting the power and charging the battery, that's actually where it leads and charge into the battery. So let's do our visual inspection. So when you want to check the visual inspection, Again, like I said, you want to check the belt, make sure it's tight, and you want to make sure it's not cracked or cut. And then in a little bit we're going to turn on the vehicle and inspect the pulley, make sure the pulley spins well and is not wiggling, jiggling, shaking or whatnot, and not squeaking. Next, what you want to do is on the B port in the connection, here's the connection for the alternator, and here's what you call the B port, that the power will actually come out of the alternator and travel to the battery, and that will charge the battery. And then you want to check the casing, and a lot of the alternators will only have 2 mounting bolts, top, and then there will be one on the bottom. Usually the top one will be a short bolt and the bottom one will be a long bolt. Okay, so we're going to check our wiring, make sure everything's not loose. And then this right here, usually it'll be like a 12 or 14 millimeter bolt, nut that's holding this cable into the alternator, and it'll have a washer with it. So the casing and everything looks fine, so our visual inspection looks good. So let's go ahead and turn on the vehicle and see if the pulley runs well. Alright, so now we're doing our visual inspection with the pulley and the belt. Let's zoom into the pulley there. As the belt is spinning, it looks like it's not squeaking or making any noise, and it's not, the pulley's not vibrating or anything, so that's a good sign for the alternator pulley. So our next test that we want to do with the alternator is we've already checked the battery, and the voltage was at, so we ran the car, so now the voltage is at 12.7, but earlier it was at 12.4. So the alternator charged the battery. So when the car is not running, the battery will be at 12 volts. When the car is running, the alternator will be charging the battery. So while testing the battery with the engine on with the multimeter, your multimeter will show from 12 point whatever to between 13.7 to 14.7, somewhere between that line, and that will show a good alternator charging the battery. So let's go ahead and turn on the vehicle and test that. So now that I have the vehicle on, we're going to go ahead and test the battery and see what the alternator charging the battery voltage will be at. So right now the multimeter is showing 14.2, and that's a good sign and indication that the alternator is charging the battery. So when the vehicle is off, it shows 12 volts, 12.7, 12.4, 12.7, and then with the vehicle on, you're going to have between 13.7 to 14.7. Well, with this multimeter right now, it's showing 14.2. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some load, and that means I'm going to turn on a few things inside the vehicle, and then you will see with the alternator charging the battery with the load off, all device off, it was at 14.2. So once we turn a few things on and add some load to the battery, it will drop a few voltage down, showing that it's using the battery. Right now I have the AC on, I have the radio on, and then I have the lights completely on. So let's check the voltage. And as you can see, it showed 14.18. So it used a couple of voltage when we're using the load. So your next test that you want to do is called a voltage drop. And so with the voltage drop, you're going to need your multimeter, and you need to make sure it's on the 20 for 12 volts. And what we're going to do with the multimeter is we're going to touch the black lead to the black negative terminal of the battery, and then the red lead is going to touch the casing of the alternator. Now all this needs to be done while the vehicle is on and everything is running, as in all the radio needs to be running, the AC needs to be on, and then your tail light and your headlights, everything, whatever that needs to be on inside the car, turn it on. And this is how you're going to do the voltage drop. And so with the voltage drop, for a good number, it's going to read negative 0.02 between negative 0.02 and negative 0.05. Anything lower than negative 0.02 is going to be bad, and anything higher than negative 0.05 is going to be bad. So let's go ahead and do the voltage drop. So again, you're going to need the negative touching the negative terminal. The positive is going to touch the casing of the alternator. So when the compressor engages, my multimeter is actually showing negative 0.02, and that's good. That is a good voltage drop. Now, when you do the voltage drop on the alternator casing and it's showing too low, under negative 0.02 and higher than negative 0.05, then you might need to inspect the casing of the alternator, and maybe the mount to the alternator to the vehicle is not clean. So try to clean the mounting area. And then with that being said, the same testing that you did on the casing of the alternator, you want to go ahead and check it on the block of the vehicle. So I'm going to do the same test. The black lead touching the negative terminal, and then the red lead touching the block of the engine, and see the voltage drop. And it shows negative 0.02. So that means the ground is good. Now, with that being said, when you do the voltage drop on the block of the engine, if it's showing too low or too high of the number I spoke of, then you need to look around your vehicle and the engine and see where the negative cable that connects the engine to the chassis of the vehicle, because it could, it could be rusted, it could be dirty, it could have layers of oil on it, so you need to change it or clean it. So I just showed you how to do a voltage drop on the negative terminal of the battery. Now we're going to do a voltage drop on the positive side of the terminal. So it's basically the same thing, but we're going to switch the lead around. So the red lead now is going to touch the positive part of the battery. And then with our negative lead of the multimeter, we're going to touch what you call the B port of the alternator. And the B port of the alternator is the connection right here to the alternator. And with that, we're going to touch, and usually there's a rubber cover or a plastic cover, and we're going to remove that. Out of the way, and we're going to touch the negative right here. And it's showing a negative 0.27. And you don't want this number. You don't want this number while you're doing the voltage test on the positive end to go any higher than negative 0.3. Anything under negative 0.3 is a good voltage drop on the positive side. And remember, with this test, you need the vehicle on and everything on, like the headlights, the radio, the AC. So again, let me show y'all. The red lead's connected to the positive terminal. You have it on 20 on your multimeter, and then where the B port is, you're going to touch the negative port to the B terminal with everything on. It should be under negative 0.3. With this being said, it's negative 0.26. So this is a good voltage drop. So that's how you do a voltage drop on the positive and the negative side. So that's, you check an alternator visually and with a multimeter. This helps you diagnose if there is an issue to the alternator, or it diagnoses if your alternator is in good shape. Hopefully this video has been helpful. If it was, please click the like button. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it down below. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to my channel. And then till next time, take it easy.